nurse came forward and said that indeed, when boys are sent to her, she is to administer to them Depo-Provera. So what the documents revealed in 1992 is actually taking place today in 2017. So we have many receipts, many documents of the government deliberately neutralizing Black masculinity, because Black masculinity is the #1 threat to white supremacy. Not just Black males, because you got feminine Black males and you got masculine Black females. The #1 threat to white supremacy is Black male masculinity, because there was that masculinity that erupted in the cities that shook the United States of America from 1965 to today.
Black women, they know how to make y'all repeat history. In the book of Enoch, they talked to the fallen angels, brought them in. The Revolutionary War, they let the Europeans in. The Avatar's about a black woman that was 6'6", man. Her name was Nohonoma from the Shawnee tribe. Her husband's name was Colonial Alexander, right? He was British. Colonial Miles Quaritch was her husband name in the Avatar. It's about y'all. Ava means Eve and Tar means black. So they make history repeat itself. She was a war chief and she was 6'6" tall, 6 feet 6 inches, fighting in Ohio in the Revolutionary War. All right, she had 2 children by the European Alexander McKee and Richard Butler, 2 of them, because she bridged to secure her survival through bloodlines and political ties for power, and would take over, fight her own people and take the land. Right? Eventually they would take it all from them though. So look, she painted her body black and she fought naked. All right, look. And she fell in love with the guns, with the power, right? And she would fight her own people and have children with the Europeans. Up to 600,000 mixed kids was during the Revolutionary War. A lot of people don't know that, right? So look. She had flowing hair and turned white in old age. Flowing hair. And she painted her face white. She was really black. They was the dark people. All right, that was the black and blue people, right? And so she fought on the side of Americans in the opposition to the majority of her own people.
Get after her! I want her!
They know this about her. So Colonial Miles Quaritch directly ties to the Sky people. All right? Colonial Alexander, he was a British Indian officer and fur trader in Pennsylvania, right? Particularly with the Shawnee tribe to secure alliances crowned during the French and Indian War, the American Revolutionary War, and the Northwest Indian War. And he had children just like them. In Avatar, they're copying this story from a real black woman, bro. So they doing the same thing. Alexander the Great did what? He showed up respect for English traditions by making Egyptian tradition by making offerings to their sacrifice gods, Apis. And then this created a blending society, right? He blended the society with Greek and with Egyptian. What did Alexander McKee do? He was a British agent who lived in American colonies in the 1700s because of his close ties with both white and settlers and Native American tribes. He acted as a bridge between the two worlds. He merged customs by trading and living amongst the tribes, right? The parallels between the Raidai and the Sky people and the Watchers, what taught humans what? The darker Navi skin was based on the grayish white ash people along with the bands of the red and black. Black people were black, and then what we get ashy. Look, the black skin is under there. See that? So Colonial Quaritch, his name was what? His real name is Stephen Lang, the guy that played it. All right, he needed an avatar body, right? Stephen Lang is his real name. Now look how God worked. Let me show y'all how God worked. Now look at my Stephen Lang was my daughter's tennis coach over the Tennis Memphis. So tennis is actually in the Kush Empire, right? Look at that. These are the emails to get my daughter Faith, right? So tennis was created by who? Pursue sinners. Pharaoh.
What's up, TT?
What's up?
I ain't gonna take you to the camp this morning. Today we about to go get some money, okay? But Daddy gotta go get some money. I gotta go, but I need your help. You feel me? All right. I need you to hold this sign for me. You know what I'm saying? And let these people know we down on our luck. You know?
I ain't no bum.
Huh?
I ain't no bum. Go rob a jewelry store or a bank. I ain't not no bum.
We ain't gonna. What you mean, go Robert? We gonna hold the sign and get some money, boo boo.
No, I am not a bum. Go rob a bank or a jewelry store. I am not a bum. I'm not about to hold that fucking sign up.
MC, make another hit.
First off, I want you to Google how they make synthetic hair. Go Google how they make synthetic hair, then come back. And I hope y'all are dipping your synthetic hair in apple cider vinegar before y'all putting it in your head.
Black Americans, never forget, the next time someone tries to tell you that we're from Africa and we're not from America, just remember there's a village in Waukesha County called Shaniqua. There's a Native American village named Shaniqua.
So in 2013, it was legalized in the United States to propagandize its citizens. What? Like, that's some scary third world stuff going on. That's the kind of stuff that people use to topple governments, to take away freedoms.
Yes, you heard that right. Almost a decade ago, propaganda was legalized in the United States with the passage of the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which you've probably never heard of. The Smith-Mundt Modernization Act was buried in the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act for a good reason, because it repealed the 1948 Smith-Mundt Act, which authorized the State Department and the mainstream media to engage in propagandizing foreign countries, but it prohibited releasing that same propaganda in America for public consumption. This prohibition was lifted when the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act was signed into law by Obama.
Very simply, Obama gave it a reboot in 2012. So, no matter how outrageous the propaganda may be, it's completely legal.
Propaganda, in other words, a false narrative, for whatever specific purpose, is now much, much easier to perpetrate on the people.
Due to the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which went into effect on July the 2nd of 2013, scripted and orchestrated propaganda can now be presented to the American public as factual news.
Hey, black baby.
I'd be like,
Multi-family apartment buildings all over the nation are starting to report that people are just taking off. The rent comes due, it doesn't get paid. They try to contact the people. It doesn't seem like anybody's there.
In the olden days, we used to work for one day with a slave owner and then get enough to pay for a rent for one night's sleep and some food. Nowadays, we work for a slave owner and they give us enough to pay for a place to sleep. We sign a contract that we'll get a month's accommodations for a month of work. Why are we paying so much money for a place just to sleep so we can get up and go work again? Is this freedom?
About 7 men climbed into the manhole on McDonald Avenue in Collin Place.
These are handlers. Handlers are real. This is a part of the onion of the Zionist mafia, in my view, is the handlers who are supposed to see if they can bring you back to the side of reason. Can't you see the error of your ways? And even when you're completely right, their job is to gaslight you into thinking that you're wrong.
They dropping a People's documentary on Rashad Jamal. But how did Rashad Jamal know that they was gonna drop a documentary on him? He used to speak on this about to happen to him. Like, he spoke on how they was gonna make him look. And this is why I say this, right? This documentary is bullshit, like Brother 363 said. A lot of people can be called a cult at that point if we saying Rashad Jamal had a cult. What my problem is, it doesn't mean that this man isn't guilty in what he did, but they're using this to destroy and attack consciousness, right? Now, people say like, oh, Rashad Jamal represented young consciousness and he was gonna wake up the melanated youth. That don't matter. They don't care about that. They don't care about no melanated youth soldiers waking up, DNA activation. Y'all is in Lulu land, bro. They got something for that. Now, what this man promoting spirituality and consciousness and other ways of living, etc., it's a 2-for-1. If they can knock him down and knock down consciousness, and you look at it and you don't want to get into it, that's why they stain it. That's why they slam any consciousness they get a chance to scare other people away from the message. It's not about him. He's not a god. He told you he's from the 8th universe. Any nigga from the 8th universe ain't finna be booked and going through no shit like this. Your ass gonna be divinely protected. We know it's a spiritual warfare. I understand that, bro. I understand. He brought a lot of good information, bro. But this shit is crazy.
What is a trans woman?
Somebody that was born with a dick, but later on decided they wanted a pussy.
Got it. So what is a woman?
Somebody that was born with the same thing my mama had me out of.
Albert Collins, the sister of Malcolm X, used to tell us that the Jews bought us in 1913 from the WASP. And I remember I used to find that so difficult to believe. I mean, how could they buy us from these other folks? After all, the Emancipation Proclamation was in 1865. And we was free. But she kept telling us, no, in 1913, the Jews bought us. Bought the rights to us from the WASP. Dr. Jeffries had put all of it together in one package at one time. And I think they became afraid that their hands as the owners of black people would be exposed. And that the black people might react against being owned unknowingly by the
Y'all, I just went and looked up my genealogy and found my ancestors in Mississippi all the way back to 1790. And they were enslaved. Instead, I found long distance grandparents who were indigenous to their lands, and they also was on the Indian roads. By 1830, they were part of the Indian Removal Act and was summoned to go to Oklahoma to document themselves. But my family ended up staying because they refused to leave, and so they did not want to give up their land. So eventually, about a couple of years later, Oklahoma and the state of Colorado made it easy access for the Mississippians who were not documented during the Trail of Tears. They were able to still be documented through the census, the Indian Road census during that time, but it had to be underneath Colorado. And so their agency was the Colorados underneath the tribe of the Southern Utes, or the Southern Utes. But it did not mean that they were the Southern Ute. They were actually Choctaw. They pretty much were the last minute Choctaws that refused to give up their land. And they were pretty much forced into just signing any type of documentations under any of the roads to document them. At the same time, there was no documentation in this central Mississippi area of any documented slaves. By then, English settlers came in, and actually that's when Jim Crow actually started in the 1840s, and they started pushing our family out of their land slowly, one by one. By 1865, my fourth great-grandfather lost all of his land, including all of his brothers and sisters. But under my assumption, they told me that everybody that was from Mississippi were slaves. But the documentation does not say that. It actually says that we were on that land. We never left that land. We were actually pushed out of the land starting in the 1840s. And then English settlers started to bring so-called slaves here, and they started occupying our land and starting cotton plantations. Meanwhile, our family were pushed off to the side and was forced to go to unknown lands and forests in order to survive without any, like, they pretty much had to start over from scratch. We just stole the land and then put the people that had that land as sharecroppers, and they pushed us out. Because when I go and see that my fifth great grandfather is on the census, he's documented as a owner of the land and he was a farmer. But he did not have slaves, nor did he own his own land, but he was the owner. So by 1869, they gave up the deeds of the rights or something like that. It was so weird, guys. It was like, first they had the land, then the land was gone, but the land was still documented. And then all of that just disappeared. So I'm confused. Where did these slaves come from? Because if the Mississippi didn't have slaves in the 1820s or the 1830s, and slaves didn't show up to 1840s, but the Civil War started in 1860, I don't see slaves. There was never documented slaves in Mississippi for hundreds and hundreds of years. Y'all, somebody's lying. I'm starting to get confused. My head's starting to hurt. I literally just went back all the way to the 1790s and found us in the Indian Rolls. And no, we were not slaves at all. And on top of that, every other family member that was on my mother's side of the family and father's side of the family, all was still there in the 1790s. None of them were documented as slaves.
I love it.
Remember this?
Yes.
Because this before my time, clearly.
And 82. I was born in 82. So I remember everything. That's why I tell everybody when they meet me that the 80s babies is here to bring down the system. Because at that time, the dome was deteriorating.
See, hold on. You might be going too far already. What you mean, dome?
The dome that we're in. I want to say, I call it like a little snow glass. You know that
Snow
little thing
globe thing, yeah.
yes, that you that's what we're
shaking
in.
it, yeah.
Or even more deeper than that little board game bobble, and you have to bobble and it has the little bubbles and it's all around across. That's exactly what we're set up in.
So you saying it's multiple places with the dome over them?
Yep.
Positive energy.